My name is Charlotte. I married Mickey when I was 25 after meeting him at a party. Mickey had always said, "You can be a stay-at-home wife if you want." And indeed, we could live comfortably on Mickey's income alone. But I loved my job, and I continued to work at the company that had taken care of me since I graduated from high school. However, in the second year of our marriage, I decided to quit my job. The trigger was a phone call from father-in-law telling me that mother-in-law had collapsed. I loved my gentle and kind mother-in-law. When I rushed to mother-in-law's side alone, as Mickey couldn't make it due to work, mother-in-law greeted me with a weak smile, connected to many tubes. Mother-in-law was not in immediate danger, but her collapse had left her in need of care. We had to decide who would take care of mother-in-law before she was discharged. I thought Angelina, my unmarried sister-in-law who lived with her parents, would do it, but she firmly refused. Angelina, who mainly works from home, told the hospitalized mother-in-law, "I'm not playing around at home, so I can't take care of Mom. Get it together." Mother-in-law smiled in a troubled way, but I was honestly taken aback by how someone could say such a thing when their own mother was suffering. Then Angelina, who didn't want to take care of mother-in-law, called Mickey and asked me for a meeting. At the in-laws' house, a meeting was held with father-in-law, Angelina, and us, the married couple, to discuss who will take care of mother-in-law. "I really can't take care of Mom."
"What should I do about the housework now that my wife has collapsed so soon?"
Angelina kept saying, "Impossible." And father-in-law, who had left all the housework to mother-in-law, seemed to have no intention of taking care of her. Mickey tried to persuade Angelina to take care of mother-in-law, but she firmly refused. The conclusion of this family meeting seemed predetermined. Angelina and father-in-law were indirectly telling me to take care of mother-in-law. I had some attachment to the job I had continued since graduating from high school, but I didn't want to see any more of this meeting, where they were pushing the care of mother-in-law, who had been so kind to me since I married Mickey, onto each other, so I made up my mind and said, "I understand. I'll quit my job and take care of mother-in-law. We'll be living together from now on, so please treat me well." Father-in-law said,
"Thank you, Charlotte,"
and thanked me happily, but Angelina spat out, "Of course." Mickey asked me,
"Are you sure? If it's too much, we can hire a professional to take care of Mom."
But I nodded. It's okay. I really owed a lot to mother-in-law. Hiring a professional would cost money, and mother-in-law might feel hesitant. I thought it would be better for mother-in-law to be taken care of by me, a family member, even though I was her daughter-in-law. I knew that father-in-law was a vague person who wanted to avoid trouble, and Angelina had a mean-spirited personality. I was anxious about having to live with these two from now on, but I made up my mind, quit my job, and started living with my in-laws. That life was more challenging than I had imagined. Mother-in-law's body had become uncooperative, so she initially lamented needing care even to go to the bathroom. She often said, "I'm sorry," to me for having to take care of her, and it was painful to see mother-in-law like that. And above all, Angelina's bullying of me as a daughter-in-law took a mental toll. My family didn't have money, and I had been working since high school without going to college, but Angelina often mocked my education. While eating the food I made and talking to father-in-law about work, she would suddenly say, "Oh, sorry, Charlotte. This conversation might be too difficult for a high school graduate. I shouldn't have talked about something you can't understand." Or she would come to me, who was caring for mother-in-law, and deliberately say, "You're just a lowly high school graduate daughter-in-law, so you have to at least take care of Mom." Mother-in-law, with her body that couldn't move freely, would scold Angelina, saying, "Don't say such things to Charlotte." Angelina seemed to hate being scolded by mother-in-law. So after being sternly told by mother-in-law, she began to badmouth me when mother-in-law wasn't around. I have a respectable job at home, so it's only natural for a lowly high school graduate like Charlotte to do the housework. So sometimes make food that tastes good. It's always so bad. When Angelina, who did no housework, said this to me while I was cooking, I even thought about not serving her meal, but I held back. When she found an unclean spot, she would say loudly, "Wow, a trashy daughter-in-law. Can't tell the difference between trash. There's so much garbage piled up." But I held back then, too. I didn't want it to become known that Angelina and I were not getting along, as it would be a mental burden on mother-in-law. I endured and lied to mother-in-law, who would ask, "Is she not being mean to you?" with a smile saying, "I'm fine." Mickey knew Angelina's personality and often worried about me.
"Are you not pushing yourself too hard?"
he would ask, and I would lie to him too, saying, "I'm fine." I didn't want to burden Mickey, who was working hard in a company with a strict boss with family problems. Father-in-law acted as if he couldn't hear how much I was being insulted. To father-in-law, who just wanted someone to do the housework in place of mother-in-law, it probably didn't matter what was said to me. For mother-in-law? For Mickey? Inspiring myself with these thoughts, I devoted myself to mother-in-law for a year. Then, mother-in-law suddenly passed away, peacefully in her sleep. "Mama died because you didn't take proper care of her. Such a useless, trashy daughter-in-law." Angelina said this to me crying, as I stood in shock in front of the deceased mother-in-law. I had done my best to take care of mother-in-law, but the thought that mother-in-law might have died because of my lack of care was swirling in my head. During mother-in-law's funeral service, I was in a daze, like an empty shell the whole time. Mickey was considerate, but Angelina kept saying to me so Mickey couldn't hear, "You're really useless." With mother-in-law's funeral service over, there was no reason for me to continue living with my in-laws. As I stood alone in my suit, looking at my mother-in-law's empty bed, father-in-law pleaded with me.
"Please, Charlotte, my wife has passed away, but won't you continue to live with us?"
Father-in-law is someone who can't do any housework at all. I couldn't imagine Angelina doing housework either. Father-in-law probably wanted me to continue living with them as a housekeeper. I was astonished by this, but more than anything, I was appalled that father-in-law would plead for such a thing right after mother-in-law's funeral service had ended. I thought this man really only thinks about himself, but I didn't give an answer on the spot. I need to consult with Mickey, so I can't decide on my own. Father-in-law clung to me, saying,
"Please, I beg you."
But I only replied that I would consult with Mickey, and the conversation ended in a stalemate.
"Charlotte, Mom has passed away. There's no need to live together anymore. Let's move out, live just the two of us. You've been through a lot, haven't you?"
A few days after mother-in-law's funeral service, Mickey said this to me. I also wanted to end the cohabitation. Now that mother-in-law had passed away, there was no reason to live with Angelina, who would speak ill of me, and father-in-law, who would treat me as a housekeeper. Thanking Mickey for his consideration, we, as a couple, decided to leave my in-law's house. But that plan was completely crushed by Angelina. "What? I won't allow you to leave. Saying such a thing the moment Mom is gone is too heartless." When Mickey and I told Angelina and father-in-law that we were thinking of leaving, Angelina became furious like a raging fire.
"It's not heartless. Charlotte took really good care of Mom. She deserves to be freed now."
"A high school graduate like her finding a job now is impossible. If she can't be useful to society, she should at least do housework in this house and be of some use to Dad and me."
"Charlotte was excellent at her job. You have no right to say that to her. Anyway, neither Mickey nor Charlotte has any intention of leaving this house."
Because Angelina stormed out of the room after saying this, the discussion was forcibly ended. But Mickey said,
"We can just leave on our own,"
and started looking for a place. I also began preparing for the move, looking for properties, while doing housework so as not to be complained about by Angelina, and reducing our belongings. But Angelina was watching me, and when I was organizing my belongings, she would scatter them, shouting, "Heartless person! I'll never let you leave this house." Or when I was making phone calls to look for property, she would snatch my mobile phone and say to the real estate agent, "Please pretend that conversation never happened." She started to act completely out of control. Mickey would get angry at Angelina every time, but she would always yell back at him, "Your wife is the worst. You have no eye for women." And nothing would improve. One day during dinner, when Mickey and I were both at our wits' end, Angelina, in a rare good mood, called out to me, "Charlotte, tomorrow my fiancé is coming to our house. I know you're a useless piece of trash, but try to use your brainless head and read the room, okay?" I was used to being berated at the dinner table when Mickey wasn't around, but I was surprised by the word fiancé that came out of Angelina's mouth. I know it's really rude, but I was shocked to think there's a man in the world who would want to marry someone like her. After being told repeatedly during dinner to be a good girl, I responded vaguely and ended the day doing housework as usual. And then the next day, Angelina, dressed more stylishly than I had ever seen her, brought her fiancé Randolph. Angelina's fiancé was wearing a well-fitted suit, was polite, and seemed intelligent. Why would such a seemingly decent person want to marry Angelina? I thought, again rudely, as I prepared drinks and headed to the living room where father-in-law, Angelina, and Randolph were. Then I heard Angelina's cajoling voice coming from the living room. That spaced-out girl earlier is Mickey's wife. She really can't do anything. I do all the housework in our house, and I worked hard to take care of our deceased mom. I think Mom could have lived longer if that girl hadn't stressed her out. I froze in the front of the living room. I felt as if I had been struck from behind by Angelina's words. The shock woke me up. Because I didn't want to burden Mickey or mother-in-law, I had been holding back. But now, it felt like all those feelings were flooding out. I did all the housework. I worked hard to take care of mother-in-law. All of it was me. Angelina never helped me with anything. I opened the living room door, quietly served the drinks, and greeted Randolph with a smile. Hello, as you were introduced. I'm the high school graduate, bottom of the barrel, useless trash. Nice to meet you. Angelina let out a panicked shout, but I kept talking smoothly. Angelina really guides me well. She evaluates every meal I make as tasteless, and when I'm cleaning, she comes to laugh, saying that the trash is cleaning up trash. She often scolded me for my caregiving, saying that mother-in-law died early because of my incompetence. You? What are you saying? Pointing at Angelina, who was furious like a demon, and smiling. See, she's guiding me like that. Angelina pulled my hair and yelled, "Stop it!" Randolph must have never seen her like this before. He looked confused, saying, What? And I felt sorry for him. But this should make him reconsider marrying Angelina. I felt like I had saved him, so I excused myself in mind for causing this chaos. Well then, the trash will leave now. I left the in-laws' house with only my valuables. Father-in-law, wanting to avoid trouble, just sat silently during my counterattack. Seeing Angelina's furious rage, and Randolph almost crying as he tried to calm her down, was refreshing. I left the in-laws' house and took refuge in my parents' home. When I explained the situation to my parents, they were appalled by Angelina's behavior and father-in-law's indifference and told me, "From now on, do as you please, Charlotte." While enjoying a relaxing time at home for the first time in a while, Mickey came to my parents' house at night. Mickey had come home to be yelled at by Angelina. "It's all your wife's fault." Giving up on getting a coherent story from the furious Angelina, Mickey somehow learned from father-in-law that I had left and came to me, even though he was tired after work.
We should have moved out forcibly sooner. I knew that my sister and father had been tormenting Charlotte all this time, and I'm sorry I couldn't help. From now on, I'll always protect Charlotte. So, if you're okay with me, I want you to stay with me as my wife forever.
Mickey, you've always tried to protect me, haven't you? I'm sorry for ruining Angela's engagement. Even Angelina, as she is Mickey's blood-related sibling. Mickey hugged me as I apologized and repeatedly told me,
Charlotte, you did nothing wrong.
I stayed at my parents' house for a while, and Mickey moved my belongings. Afterwards, Mickey and I found a nice property, moved there, and were able to start a peaceful life. We received calls from Angelina and father-in-law every day, but we blocked them. According to Mickey, Angelina's engagement was called off. Randolph was taken aback by the overly excited Angelina and said, "I need to think about marriage," and then became unreachable. Angelina was crying and yelling at Mickey. "It's your wife's fault." But Mickey calmly replied,
Charlotte just told the truth.
Father-in-law seemed desperate after losing his housekeeper, his daughter-in-law. He asked Mickey,
"Can you bring Charlotte back?"
But Mickey said,
"I'm cutting ties with this house,"
and left the in-laws' house. As for me, I found out I was pregnant a few months after leaving the in-laws' house. When I told Mickey, he was thrilled and he changed jobs from the strict company where he was working, saying,
I can't raise our child together with my current job.
Mickey decided to change jobs. I believe he's trying to keep the promise he made when he came to pick me up at my parents' house, that he would protect Charlotte. Since we've cut off contact with the in-laws, we haven't reported that we're having a child. I think there's no need to report it, as I'm sure that even if Angelina and father-in-law knew I was having a child, their attitudes wouldn't change. Now that my belly has grown, Mickey and I are looking forward to the birth of our child and living happily day by day.